Coffee Sketch Podcast is our take on the intersection of old tech and new tech, the space between the traditional practice of the hand-drawn sketch that has been performed by architects and designers for centuries, and the modern-day use of the hashtag as a representation of a sentiment or a movement. Each week we plan to deliver a new pod about our ideas, sketches, and what's going on in our daily lives as we pursue our love of architecture, design, and sharing this knowledge with the next generation. I'm Kurt, and I'm in Flint.
And I'm Jamie, and I'm in Austin.
Hey, Jamie. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I don't know. Pretty good. I think I'm doing well. I think I'm.
You got the giggles?
Yeah, I've got the time constraint giggles. I don't know what to do with myself since we don't have enough time.
Yeah. Can't do all that wasting time ahead of time. So yes. But we do have the coffee.
Hey, we've got like almost the same mug.
That's like
the handle's a little.
Yeah, just a little.
We need some Coffee Sketch mugs.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's like swag. We've got those pins, which are we're good.
Yeah. So I've got one thing.
I did see somebody like trying to, hustle the idea of architects branded coffee. So
really
tried to get in the podcast sort of surreptitiously into that. Not surreptitiously, it was very direct into that conversation, and not very many people got it, but that's okay.
Well, there's still a chance with our local guy.
I think they would be fantastic because they appreciate the good graphics on their bags. They seem to work with some good artists, and the coffee's pretty great. So I like it. Well, I like that idea.
I will reach back out. I owe a return to that as put it in my to-do list. So before we dive into the quick sketch of the day, I did want to point out for any of the listeners out there that we have started to post this podcast on YouTube to further gift the gift of Jamie's sketches, and so that you can watch this conversation
and our dialogue
and the dialogue. Yes, taking full advantage of technology, and so that you can watch the sketch or watch us talk about the sketch, and not just hear us talk about the sketch.
Right.
If that makes sense. Is that
well? And it's sort of for those early listeners or who maybe inadvertently listened to that first episode by clicking around, they might have heard that a lot of the origin of you and I playing with this technology and the sort of the impetus for us having these kind of conversations started out with your dabbling in sort of a video blog, back in the day, and sort of doing kind of a walking tour, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit here today, ironically enough. But first things first. So what's the coffee of the day in Flint?
Well, so earlier I had, because you're going to hate me because I'm going to be honest of what I'm drinking at the moment, but earlier I had some of our local rootless coffee makers. It's called Berry Kiss. I don't know if I sent that to you or not. It's their light roast. I think it's their lightest roast, which I didn't really know this. I probably should have known this, but I guess lighter roasts of coffee have higher caffeine content. Because I guess the roasting actually pulls the caffeine out of the coffee.
Does it really have sort of a berry flavor?
What I pick up mostly is,
do you smell it more than you taste it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a little bit of an aroma. I guess it is kind of a sweetish, not Swedish, but a sweeter scent.
That would be like if IKEA had their own coffee brand.
It would smell like meatballs, right?
Yeah, it'd be like meatballs and like those little gummy fish things. And you'd have to put it all together. Like there would be instructions with no words. They might like the podcast because there are drawings.
That's a fantastic idea.
I mean, there are drawings.
I think you should make a drawing of what that would look like.
I could do that.
I could do one too. And we could see what we come up with.
That would be that might be the impetus for us getting someone to roast some coffee for us
in Sweden, not Switzerland, Sweden.
Okay, we're going to work on geography. We've already discussed your math skills before, so
the math. Let's go back to geographically, let's go back to Austin and ask Jamie what he's up to drinking.
Oh, yeah.
coffee
So
wise.
it is fall. It is officially fall, I think.
It's feeling like it up here.
It might have like started to feel like fall today. Like I actually almost considered like, do I want a long sleeve shirt? So yeah, as I'm wearing my jersey. But no, so I did, it is that time of year where I will indulge myself in the limited edition Starbucks maple pecan coffee because it feels a little bit like fall, and I do like the pecan kind of flavor, but then maple and maple syrup. I mean, Canadian, so it's I'm drawn to it. There's something in the DNA, but yeah, no, I like it. It's what I was trying to figure out. I knew that we were going to talk about it a little bit, and what I'm surprised at is because I'm not really into the sort of sweet coffees. I like, darker roasts and sort of richer. This is one that sort of is a little bit on the sweeter side, but it does have that sort of savory because of the pecan and the toastiness of it. So I think that sort of savory, and it's a nice medium blend. I mean, it's a little bit, it's not on the light side like I guess yours is, but I this is the only time of year I get it. So it's good.
You think, is it regional? Like, does Starbucks do regional stuff, or is that something I could find up here?
I think you probably could buy it. Yeah, no, I think you could probably get it. I mean, I think it's more of a like
seasonal,
more seasonal than regional. Yeah,
I'll have to keep an eye out. I've been trying to support my local roasters. Support your local brewers as well. So in the evenings. All right. So I know Jamie's got he's all geared up or kitted out. Is that the way you say it? Kitted out?
Yes.
In the Austin FC. So we're going to try and squeeze in a quick podcast whilst Jamie gets ready for the soccer game. So what we thought we would do, I'm going to share my screen for everyone and jump right into it. So what I'd love to hear about, since we haven't caught up yet, and you've had a busy couple of weeks and I had a busy week with my own AIA regional event. So tell me about the AIA Texas, or Texas Society of Architects. This is their annual meeting, right? The big show.
Yeah, so this is the big conference. So that you get the traditional lanyard with your name and all that business. And so I was actually a speaker this year, like an official one. So I got the speaker badge. This is the 82nd annual conference. It's statewide. See, there's Kurt with his badge. He's got fancy titles and stuff on his.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
All kidding aside, so part of our profession, of course, is continuing education. So that's what all of these conferences are. But I think it was sort of for me, I don't know how it was for you, but it was a pretty big deal having an in-person conference like this. I mean, after having so many virtual ones, this one didn't have a virtual component. You and I had talked about the national conference, how we kind of enjoyed some of the virtual aspects of things, and knowing that national is going to go back to their in person, but we were kind of lamenting that there's some aspects of that virtual piece that's sort of fun and that we wouldn't want them to necessarily lose. I think this was different. Certainly attendance was down, which is completely understandable, but the conference was in San Antonio, and I was able to do a pre-conference workshop, and it was Let's Coffee Sketch in San Antonio. So I was very, very excited. And I think that was probably maybe what drew me to, no pun intended, maybe a pun intended, to actually go into the conference was sort of the opportunity to kind of explore kind of the workshop format, get out, walk around in San Antonio with a bunch of other architects who enjoy sketching. And we've talked a lot about kind of urban exploring and things like that. And so weather was fantastic, and it was a good opportunity to get out. And so the image on the screen was, they did give us one of those small seminar rooms in the conference center, sort of as an initial rally point. And what I wanted to do was, for those who didn't necessarily know who I was or kind of what my background was, kind of explain that a little bit stylistically, and kind of explain kind of the breadth of different sketches. So I brought basically my 5 most recent sketchbooks, and plus the one that I had just started or just been working on here recently. And and then showed them a bunch of different media as well. That really kind of the idea that we've talked about a lot is being nimble and just trying to, and you see the coffee in there too. But yeah, so it was sort of trying to encourage that and discourage the idea of being too self-critical, especially for those who were, recognizing that they signed up for this, were excited about it, but then at the same time a little bit nervous because they hadn't sketched in a long time, and certainly not like in this sort of way. So tried a couple of different things to disarm some folks intentionally.
Sure.
And had a good time.
So what was the turnout? How many signups did you get?
We had 15. 15 for the workshop, so that was pretty great. I think if it was a little bit more than that, it would have been maybe a little bit harder to kind of walk and talk and draw and all that stuff.
Sure. Did you met up in the seminar room and you didn't show like any PowerPoint, you actually just showed them the physical sketchbooks, like held them up or something, is that how you did it?
Yeah. No PowerPoints, no laptops. Yeah. I
like that. To show them.
Like let's powwow around a table and let them kind of look through the books while I was talking a little bit. And because it was sort of, knowing that it was a new, the first session, as a pre-conference session, people were arriving, some were arriving that day or arriving that morning, going through registration and then coming over to the seminar, wanted to, and because we were going to be immediately leaving and leaving the convention center, I didn't want to lose anybody. So wanted everybody to have an opportunity to kind of arrive at one point, gather, and then eventually disperse.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you had how long? An hour and a half or something, maybe?
3 hours.
Oh,
it was a 3-hour pre-conference workshop.
And how many credits did they gift the attendees for a 3-hour? Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So you took them out. I mean, with 3 hours, you can really get a lot of sketching and walking. And I mean, San Antonio is, I'm a little jealous because I've seen some buildings in, online or in photographs, some, from other people and yourself probably, of San Antonio, and there's the river area, right, which got kind of an overhaul or a sort of feature. I mean, you'll have to explain it more to me, but because I haven't been there, and that's the thing is I'd love to go check out San Antonio. I know there's like, for example, Lake Flato, right? They're based in San Antonio, right?
Lake Flato is based in San Antonio. They actually got a honor award for one of their first design award projects. It was literally I didn't realize it was the first, but I wasn't surprised when they made that, made mention of that, because it was one that I remember from their early career, and it was gifted or recognized as a 25-year honor award winner.
That's nice. In the home, what do you call it? The home city, I guess, the host city for the conference. Yeah. That's, I'm a fan of their work because I think it's a very, all their projects have a unique, or let's say site-based approach, and very subtle, very carefully chosen materials. And I think we've even talked about some of their buildings through a sketch of yours in the past. I feel like we have, if not on the podcast. I know we've talked about it before.
We talked about the Austin Library, which they worked on with Shepley Bullfinch.
Yes, that's what. Yeah.
And then I believe we also talked about their recent park structure that they had done in San Antonio. It was a sort of an interesting sketch. I know that I've sketched it, but I'm not sure if we talked about it on the pod. Anyhow, but yeah, it was neat to see them get recognized. And San Antonio it's a very kind of rich architectural history, and it can be a very walkable city in certain respects, especially I think because tourism is such a strong component of their economy, especially downtown. They have a very large convention center, and the convention center, the site of it is a former World's Fair site.
Oh.
So it's already sort of, planned, in that vein to allow for interesting access to different parts of the city, and that was very, very evident. And then there was I did end up doing another sketch of some other more modern projects as well, but later on in the conference. But the workshop was fantastic. It was a great opportunity for me to try this kind of format, and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, and there was lots of time. There was lots of time to, like you say, to get out and walk around
and the
try.
Yeah. So then at the end of it, what was the feedback like? I mean, you got 15 people with a probably of a varying degree of sketch. What do you call it? Ability and or regularity
and comfort, right?
And comfort level. Yeah. And then at the end of it, I hope they all were excited and sort of re-energized on hoping to, maybe you'll see some more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, it was interesting. I knew a few folks, so it was fun to sort of connect with some people that I had connected with who I knew were sketchers from Instagram that happened to be at the conference and decided to attend the session. So that was fantastic to kind of connect with them in real life, so to speak. But I think the one thing that a lot of them were surprised at was I started the exercise. We ended up walking over to the cathedral, which is about a 10-minute walk from the convention center. So everybody was sort of, given an opportunity to kind of get out and walk around, early on in the day, and got over to the cathedral. And I selected that location because they have a really kind of large piazza, and there's some shade and some seating and variety of different seating options, kind of not knowing what this group was going to necessarily look like, or how comfortable they were going to be with sort of sketching. And in doing that, gave everybody, you'll see sort of in that image that there's some charcoal. And so everybody got their own charcoal stick, and the early exercises to warm up and to sort of describe that process and sort of why I do that, and how I've sort of grown to realize that sort of the drawing warm up, that's sort of akin to in figure drawing, the gesture drawing. The very, very kind of quick, this is the form, this is the line, this is the weight of the object, this is the frame, this is where the action or the axis is coming from. Explained those kind of concepts very, very quickly, but then gave everybody a charcoal stick and said, okay, we're going to do a 2-minute sketch. And nice. So we walked into the plaza, started to talk, gave everybody their charcoal and said, okay, don't go anywhere. Just, get out your pad. And everybody started, half of them started to get the charcoal ready to work. And some were like switching the charcoal to their pen or their pencil. I was like, no. Like everybody's going to do the charcoal. And then they were like, oh, okay, and it was fun because I think everybody and there were some of the remarks even, and what we did was we powwowed up, throughout the whole thing. So I didn't necessarily do any drawing demos per se, but kind of hovered over some people's shoulders, and while they were drawing, I drew a little bit myself so that I could sort of demonstrate or at least kind of point out things that I was doing or seeing or was challenged by while I was working in the same location that they were, under the same time constraints. But one of the things that we also did was we kind of came back together collectively and put the books down, very similar to what Joel described with his Urban Sketchers group. But in this particular case, tried to elicit responses from folks where they could describe what they were challenged by in their sketch, or what they were, as we talked through some different techniques, if they were trying to employ some of those techniques, how was it? One person noticed, who was familiar with some of my work, knew that I went across the page. I didn't just draw on one side of the book. And I was doing that while I was on site. And so they purposely tried to challenge themselves to do that. So that was sort of fun to see and hear how that was going for them. Others, using the charcoal, they really liked the idea of realizing that they could make some very, very small marks to kind of understand the composition really, really quickly, and then come back in and either work the edge or work the shadows or work the forms. We talked about as we moved from the charcoal to kind of picking up the pen and the pencil, as we went from a 2-minute to a 5-minute sketch, I said, this is your opportunity. You don't have to use the charcoal anymore. And we did, because we did a series of the 2-minute sketches. And what I tried to do was start with the charcoal and then switch to a pen and kind of work between both in the same sketch, and to show the mixed media, the thing that you and I've talked about, several times, and show them that even in a quick sketch, you can still, kind of play with two different media to generate a composition. It isn't just all rendering what you're seeing, but also sort of rendering an image on the page, and sort of playing with composition and ideas and working them out in a finite amount of time. That was the other thing that a lot of folks commented on at the end, was they were hearing me say it, very early on and then repetitively all the way through about these sort of time constraints. And then at the end, they were sort of realizing that even the longer they were sketching, the easier it was coming. But then at the end, the sketch that I think you were going to show, that was our last one, was a 15 to 20 minute sketch or time frame. And everybody was sort of remarking that it was almost too much time. Sort of, I think if there was a vote, there was a general consensus that the 10-minute sketch was about the sort of the perfect time frame. Yeah, sort of the sweet spot.
Yeah, well, so I'm glad. Yeah, trying to be conscious of this for our own time constraint that we're putting ourselves under to talk about this stuff, since you got to head out and enjoy an Austin FC game. But yeah, so ending here. So this is the long sketch. It's really nice. It has a really nice sort of looseness to it, but that still conveys a ton of the detail and a really nice sentiment of the space. You've got some people in here for scale, which
it's always, yeah. I mean, and so, there are a lot of folks, I think there was only one person that was actually from San Antonio. Everybody was from somewhere else. And so knowing where we were in the city, everybody's got to make that, that one pilgrimage to the Alamo. And so, we went, so we went to the Alamo, and everybody found different locations to sketch from. And the one that I found was, I realized as I was sort of, deciding where I was going to just kind of sit for a second, that this particular location seemed to be where everybody was gathering to take their one photo in front of the Alamo. So even though I wasn't necessarily drawing a particular person, they wasn't always standing as scale figures in the same location. And so that was sort of fun.
That's a great tie-in to our whole Coffee Sketch podcast, right? It's the intersection of old school and new school. We've got the sketch and the Instagram, probably the selfie that will wind up on the Instagram for the Alamo.
Exactly. Side by side.
That's great. Well, I guess we should probably end there. That's no better place.
You didn't talk about your conference though. Well, how was Michigan? You got a minute or two?
There's no time. All right. I
want to hear that. Give me the condensed version.
Well, ours was not like the annual, the big conference. This was for AI Michigan region. This was our leadership retreat. So it was on the west side of the state in Holland, Michigan. It was actually held at Hayworth's headquarters. So if you're familiar with the furniture manufacturer, which I will try and post some pictures, their facility is fantastic. And I wonder if our friend John Pendorf at Perkins and Will did the renovation of the building. Not that recently, but it's still a fantastic space. And there's a lot of LEED gold building. So that's why I think of John, because he is a big sustainability and proponent over at that office, the Perkins Will office. So it was a nice space. It was graciously hosted by Hayworth. They did sponsor the event really well and took us out to dinner even the night before. And so it was a very kind of a fun, like you said in the beginning, this for me, for a Michigan event, was the first face-to-face event to go to, which I kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit over the thing. But then as things started to look a little better here in the state of Michigan, and the attendance list wasn't gigantic, so I said, I'll go for it. And luckily enough, I was able to sort of audible back to in person. Being that I'm on the board as a director from the Flint area, it was nice to have the board meeting, the day before or the afternoon before dinner with the rest of the board that I hadn't really seen. I mean, I knew everybody on the board, but I hadn't seen them in over a year. So it's
Right.
nice to hold a board meeting and, connect with the staff at AI Michigan again. And, kind of, it almost centers things back a little bit, and you don't feel so out on an island, even when, the chapters are all across the state. You can kind of get together. Anyway, actually, the last thing I'll say is there was a great keynote from the director of HR for Hayworth, who made a good point about virtual life, right? So there's, in a face-to-face situation, energy is exchanged between, say, a speaker and a receiver in the room, or two people having a conversation. They're exchanging not only words, but they're actually, electrons are moving back and forth, right? But when you go into this virtual world, it's really a one-way exchange or output, and there's nothing coming back. So it can be very draining. And so to keep that in perspective, as as we try and mix modes between virtual and in person, and think about the energy that we can still gain from each other, and how you also need to take a little break for yourself sometimes with all the virtual stuff. So anyway, so I think I'll stop there because I know you got to go, and I think that was a key takeaway for me.
Yeah,
And we'll probably circle back to,
Yeah, well, I was just going
future.
to say, it's great that you kind of made that point about the keynotes, and I think sort of that kind of concept, because usually one of the things that will draw me to a conference, or kind of engage me, is the idea of hearing a particular person speak, especially with the keynote. They clearly are, or hopefully are, getting up for it and kind of crafting a really strong message. And if the conference organizers have done a good job of getting keynote speakers, you can certainly get that. I think in Texas's case, I think they really had some excellent ones this time. I think you would have really enjoyed it. They had 3 over the course of 2 days. Mm-hmm. So the pre-conference day that I'm referring to is also where our board meeting lives, mm-hmm. and so. Mm-hmm. I'm not on the board. That's not my thing.
Well, then
so
you have less gray hair.
Yeah, my workshop was actually during the board meeting, so I was very happy. I was very happy about that. But the keynotes that we had, though, there were 3. We had Brian Lee from New Orleans. I don't know if you've heard Brian speak before, but if you do get the chance, he's pretty fantastic. I've heard him speak before in Dallas, and he's done a lot. He's done like a South by Southwest with Michael Ford in the past, and has done some stuff with Monument Lab. But I don't know if I'll pronounce his firm correctly. It's Collocate. Anyhow, it's in New Orleans, and design as protest, and it's really, really good work. And he always, I think his, for every time that I've seen him speak or whatnot, I think it's all very timely, and it's not just sort of a rehash of his work or the work that he's been involved in, or the causes or efforts, or it's all very timely. And it's almost like he's writing it the night before, and so I think he was a great addition. She spoke as well as one of the keynotes, and then
our new fellow, right?
Yeah, a brand new fellow, and now working with David Adjays. I don't know if you knew that or not. She's recently joined his firm. This year, I believe, but is still based in New York City and doing her Say It Loud kind of, I would say, conference, exhibit, but it's so much more than that. And there's a growing kind of web component and interview component and multimedia component, and which she spoke to. And I think, but what was really evident in especially in her talk was sort of this notion that you're sort of saying about kind of that level of engagement and that energy that you can draw from a speaker and an audience. I think that was, if hers had been delivered in just a Zoom environment, I think it would, the message would all still be there, but I don't think the energy would have been the same. And I think people wouldn't have necessarily, and the fact that they could go outside and actually see some of her Say It Loud exhibit on display, immediately outside.
Oh, wow.
The keynote was is important. I mean, there's something about, especially as architects, about place and that sort of level of engagement. And then the other one was Marlon Blackwell.
Oh, cool. Wow.
So,
Man, you guys really wrangled some good ones.
yeah. So
Now,
I guess
you're right. I wish I was there. We'll have to try and, what do you call it? Weave our way back in with the Coffee Sketch podcast maybe next year, since, we had 2 years ago, right? The
that's right.
Pachachkucha. And now, anyway, so yeah, that sounds like a great show. And with that, you got a better show to get to.
I just have another show to get to.
Well, it was good to catch up, and we'll do another one soon. And enjoy the game. Go Viva Verde, right? Thank you for listening. We both hope that you enjoyed this episode of Coffee Sketch Podcast. Our theme music is provided by my brother, who goes by @coldfashioned on Instagram and Twitter. Our podcast is hosted at coffeesketch.buzzsprout.com. Find more show notes and information from this episode. And finally, if you like what you heard, please rate us on iTunes and share us with your friends. Thank you.